This is Geometry Homework Section 16.4, Reference and Special Angles. Number one, find the reference angle. Just to remind you what that is. It's an acute angle formed by the x-axis and the terminal side. So in this case, it's that angle there. So it's 200 total degrees. It's 180 to the negative x-axis. The difference between 180 and 200 is 20. So the reference angle is 20 degrees. Number two, in the negative direction, we got 215 degrees. To the negative x-axis, that would be negative 180. So we got negative 180 plus 40 plus 35 more is going to get us into, excuse me, 215. So this would be 35 degrees. Reference angle is 35. Remember, reference angle is always positive. Number three, we're looking for this angle here as the reference angle. This is counting by radians. So I'm going to mark the quadrantal angles. So we got 0 pi over 12. Complete revolution is 24 pi over 12. This is 19 pi over 12. So difference between 24 and 19, that is 5 pi over 12. Number four, the reference angle would be this angle here. This is negative 7 pi over 6. And then the negative x-axis is negative 6 pi over 6. The difference between those is 1 pi over 6. Make sure your reference angle is always positive. Number five, there's no picture. This is negative 130 degrees, so I think we will draw a picture. Negative 130 is going to fall into quadrant 3, making the angle here that remains 50 degrees. Remember, a reference angle is acute, it's positive. So 50 degrees is number five. Number six, 230. That's going to fall into quadrant 3 as well, with the negative x-axis being 180 and the negative y-axis being 270 degrees. So 230 is 50 more than 180. So the reference angle for this is 50 degrees. Number seven, this is in radians. I'm going to mark my quadrantal angles, counting by pi over 9. So we got 0 pi over 9, and complete revolutions 2 pi, which is 18 pi over 9. This is a negative angle, so I should be using a negative angle here. Halfway around is going to be negative 9 pi over 9. It's the same thing as negative pi. Halfway between 0 and negative 9 is negative 4.5 pi over 9. Numerator is decreasing by 4.5 each time. Whoops, over here I wrote this over pi when I meant to write over 9. Okay, so we're at negative 13. That's going to fall just short of negative 13.5. So if we're at negative 13 and the x-axis negative style is negative 9, the difference between those is negative 4 pi over 9. Reference angles are always positive, so our answer is 4 pi over 9 is our reference angle. Number 8, 3 pi over 4. If we count by pi over 4s, the negative x-axis is 4 pi over 4 going in the positive direction. 3 pi over 4 is going to fall in quadrant 4 because the positive y-axis is 2 pi over 4. That leaves this reference angle right here as pi over 4. 3 pi over 4 plus 1 pi over 4 is 4 pi over 4. All right, find the exact values of these little fellas. And there's a picture over to the right that we can use to help us with this. So sine is y over r at 90 degrees, which is here. X is 0, y is 1, and r is 1. Therefore, sine of 90 degrees is 1 over 1, which is 1. Cosine of 120 degrees, 120 is going to fall into quadrant 2. More importantly, it makes this reference angle 60 degrees. This is the 30, 60, 90. If we make the smallest side 1, the longer leg is going to be the square root of 3, and the radius is going to be 2. Keep in mind that in quadrant 3, x is negative, or quadrant 2, I'm sorry, x is negative, so we got negative 1 for the x value. Cosine of 120 then is x over r, which is negative 1 over 2. See, while I'm here, there's another 120 here. So let's do that one as well. Tangent of 120, it's the same picture that I have drawn here. Tangent is y over x. Y is the square root of 3, x is negative 1. So this is square root of 3 over negative 1, and this reduces to negative square root of 3. Any other 120s? No. Let's go to 45 degrees. 45 degrees is going to fall into quadrant 1. 45, 45, 90. Let's make the short legs both 1. That's going to make the hypotenuse here square root of 2. Tangent is y over x. That's going to be 1 over 1, which is 1. Any other 45s in here? There is not. We have cosine of 225. That's this next one. I hate to draw a picture over top of my picture. Well, let me just draw this off to the side here. I really should have given you a ton of work for this. 225 is going to fall into quadrant 3, making the reference angle 45. In quadrant 3, x and y are negative, and in a 45, 45, 90, I like to call the legs 1. That makes the hypotenuse the square root of 2. Cosine is x over r. That's negative 1 over the square root of 2. If you rationalize this, you get negative square roots of 2 over 2. Sine of 135, that's going to fall into quadrant 2. That gives us a reference angle of 45. X is negative 1, y is 1, r is square root of 2. Sine is y over r. If you rationalize this, you're going to get square root of 2 over 2. (330 degrees). That's going to be in quadrant 4 with a reference angle of 30 degrees. So we got a 30, 60, 90. Opposite 30 would be negative 1. Opposite 60, square root of 3, and the radius is 2. Sine is y over r, so that's negative 1/2. Any other 330s? No. Oh, we had another. No, we didn't. Tangent of 315. Once again, I have so many regrets for not giving you more space. Tell you what we'll do. I will change the homework assignment to get rid of all of those problems. I think I was asking a lot. That'll give us more room to do this. I will make sure that the website reflects that we are not doing those problems. Gives me lots of room, doesn't give you lots because you can't just erase that. So 315, that's in quadrant 4. That makes the reference angle 45. So it's a 45, 45, 90. 45, 45, 90, x and y are 1, and the radius is square root of 2. Since it went down, with y is negative, x is positive. R is always positive. Tangent is y over x. That's a negative 1 over 1, which is negative 1. Cosine of 240. 240 is going to fall into quadrant 3, leaving a reference angle of 60. 30, 60, 90. Opposite 30 is going to be negative 1 because we went left. Opposite 60 is negative square root of 3. We went down. The radius is 2. Cosine of 240 degrees, that's x over r. That's negative 1 over 2. Sine of 225, negative style. If we go in the negative direction of 225, we're going to be in quadrant 2. And that's going to give us a 45, 45, 90. X is negative 1, y is positive 1, and r is square root of 2. Sine is y over r. That's 1 over the square root of 2. If you rationalize it, you get square root of 2 over 2. Cosine of negative 240. That's going to fall in quadrant 2, making the reference angle 60. 30, 60, 90. Opposite 30, I'm going to call negative 1. Opposite 60 is positive square root of 3, and the radius is 2. Cosine is x over r, so it's negative 1/2. Tangent of negative 300. That's going to fall into quadrant 1, making the reference angle 60. 30, 60, 90. Opposite 30 is 1. Opposite 60 is square root of 3. Opposite 90 is 2. Tangent is y over x. That's square root of 3 over 1, which is square root of 3. Every one of those problems is either a special right triangle or a quadrantal angle. Number 9 is the only one that was quadrantal. And I told you before that we weren't going to do these. 57 and 58, we can do these ones. Fill in the table below. So we got 240 degrees. So that's going to fall into quadrant 3. And that's going to make this reference angle 60 degrees. So opposite 30, wish I could tell you what, I'm going to make this bigger. Reference angle 60. Opposite 30, I'm going to call 1. Opposite 60, square root of 3, and the radius is going to be 2. Keep in mind that if you're in quadrant 3, both x and y are negative. So what is sine of 240 degrees? Well, it's y over r, so that's a negative square root of 3 over 2. What's cosine of 240 degrees? That's x over r, so that's negative 1/2. What's tangent of 240? It is y over x. That's negative square root of 3 over negative 1, which reduces to square root of 3. I'm supposed to find a radian measure of this. So if we take 240 degrees and you multiply it by pi radians over 180 degrees, the degrees cancel, and you can divide top and bottom by 10. You can divide 24 and 18 both by 6. You're going to go 4 into the top and 3 onto the bottom. This is the same as 4/3 pi. We need a negative version of this angle. Well, if it's 240 in this direction, it's going to be negative 120 in this direction, because if you add those, you're going to get 360. A negative radian angle. Just going to draw this picture here. So from here to here is 4 pi over 3. To get over to here, to get 6 pi over 3, we'd have to have 2 pi over 3. And we want a negative version, so if we go in this direction, it's a negative 2/3 pi. Didn't write the negative symbol. All right, 58. We are given a negative radian angle of negative 3 pi over 4. That's going to put us in quadrant 3. That's going to make the reference angle pi over 4. So if the reference angle is pi over 4, we can answer these questions here. So pi over 4 is the same as 45 degrees. So this is a 45, 45, 90. The legs are both -1, and the hypotenuse is square root of 2. Sine is y over r. If you rationalize this, you get negative square root of 2 over 2. Cosine is x over r, which is also a -1 over the square root of 2, which is also going to rationalize to negative square root of 2 over 2. Tangent of theta is y over x. If you divide two negatives, you get a positive, so that's +1. So what is a positive version of this angle? Well, from here to here is 4 pi. Add 1, it's 4 pi over 4. Add 1 more pi over 4 to that, we're going to get 5 pi over 4. If we change 5 pi over 4 to degrees, we're going to multiply it by 180 degrees over pi. Pi's cancel. 4 goes into 180, 45 degrees times. 5 times 45 is 225. This is 225 degrees. That's from here to here. So how many degrees is it from here to here? Well, it's 360 minus 225, which is 135. And we want to go in the negative direction, so that's -135. All right, there you go.